Okay, all right. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at this. So for those who weren't here last time, let's see. Right, so this is a boot camp. We've had some trainings for staff and students from April and May. Last week we had our official opening, and this is a series of boot camps that ends in July that meet on Mondays and Wednesdays. Mondays focuses on Wednesdays focuses on skit major projects, but everybody can are welcome to come. And Mondays is open to anybody who's interested in research, whether they're a research scholar with many publications or somebody completely new to research. So I presented this last week, so I was giving a context. So AWESUM stands for Academic Writing Education, Scholar Uplifting Mentoring. And the context that I, as the founder, have is when I went to a mixed methods conference in Jamaica, I really saw it was in Montego Bay, really saw the potential for sophisticated, challenging, um, impactful research. Anyway, so we're launching this research lab this year, and I'm hoping to have good or even great outcomes in 4 years. So to do relevant, rigorous, rewarding research and development. So the aim is to improve the capacity of staff and students in conducting good research. The objective is to increase the performance of students in terms of their assessments in research classes, to have more publications and presentations by staff and students in journals, academic conferences, and media like TV, radio, etc. And clearly to have positive outcomes for society, both social benefits and economic benefits in a best case scenario. So last week in the what was that, in the launch, my talk was about activating WOW, which for me stands for working on important research projects, openly collaborating for research impact, and writing your journal article, if you can, after you collect the data in 12 weeks or less. By the way, this doesn't mean publish in 12 weeks or less. This means collect your data and then write your article in 12 weeks and then wait for the publications to come through. And so last week we talked about there's so many different focus areas, and I was looking at it from a computing point of view and what are the interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary projects. So personally, probably I'm most interested in these personally. So I'm interested in digital health, technology, entrepreneurship, computers and education, frugal innovations, meta tech for you tech, and projects proposed by students who are highly motivated, and any other project that's in line with Jamaica's Vision 2030 or strategic plan of the university that we work at. And in general, in my opinion, the publications that we should be focused on is not only empirical studies, but also systematic reviews, because they form the basis for people to be well informed about a topic of interest, as well as position papers, because I've been told and I've looked, position papers are probably the most well cited no matter what discipline. A position paper is just basically a perspective somebody has on a topic and they write with citations and they have value. And last week I talked about there are so many different projects at UTech. I won't talk about this right now. And just giving a snip of what I did last week. So I also showed that there's a paper that actually indicated that there are more collaborations over time. So from 1980 to 2018, within an institution, it has risen. Within a region, the collaborations have risen, and authors per paper have risen a lot. And that same paper basically indicated that essentially collaboration basically makes research work more effectively, essentially. And then another thing I talked about, remember, is WOW, work on important projects, openly collaborate, and then the last W is for writing. So these are three books with that are all highly rated. I've only read this one, How to Write a Lot. I own it. And I am part of a online Facebook group for this. And the Facebook group is actually quite good. I would love to buy this book one day soon. And this is a very recently published book with really high reviews. So I thought I just put these three here just for those who are ready to buy a book. If you're ready to write, these all have really high reviews on Amazon.com. And so what's this whole thing about? So I like acronyms, so please bear with me. So STIR for me is Summer Transformative Upskilling Research Experience, which is what's starting today. So the goal is not only to write and publish this year to help staff and students, but in terms of SCIT, because we're in SCIT here, but we're inviting anybody across university or anybody else who, I've actually invited people outside of UTech. So don't know if there's anybody here today outside of UTech, but it is in the context of UTech to have better major projects and final theses. And in terms of SCIT, we normally have our research projects for undergrads for a whole year, and the students get going rather late. So we're hoping that if the third year students come to this or come at any point in this process, or even come to the end when we present what we've done this summer, you'll be able to see how to start concept papers from the summer and not wait until the last moment. And so, so all of us should be able to learn from the analysis of the projects. And so I had three possible foci for this summer: work readiness of undergraduate computing students, online health champions during COVID-19, a social media intervention ban for youth, and a project that I attempted to start last year and haven't really gotten further than the proposal, which is looking at how online, as in emergency road teaching, has actually impacted students and possibly staff. For me, as remember, this is an awesome project, is about asking good questions, writing regularly, and entertaining feedback. We won't talk about all the sub parts of that right now. And awesome steps in research and development goes from, and for those who are already familiar, this would not be surprising. You first need to write either a concept paper or a research proposal. By the way, I actually found out about the term concept paper from Dr. Ivy when he was giving a really good talk. The second hour was excellent. He gave a talk about 2 years ago about how to prepare a research proposal. And he talked about the importance of possibly giving a concept paper to your funder so that you get an idea if they're interested in that fund. But I've actually found out since that this is a regular thing, that a lot of people write concept papers before they write the entire research proposal. Anyway, after you do the research proposal, which is typically consists of 3 chapters or a brief version, chapter 1 being the introduction, chapter 2 being the review, chapter 3 being the methods. Then you need to write an ethics application. In the US, it's called the Institutional Review Board. In Commonwealth countries, it's called Research Ethics Committee, and you need to get an approval. UTech has an ethics committee. And then you actually conduct the research. You collect data, whether primary or secondary. If you are in computing or engineering, typically you also build a prototype, you write out the project, and depending on the situation, you may do an oral presentation as well, which is typically called Viva in some places. And then this is what's missing across many people in UTech, including myself. Most of us don't have enough journal papers, present enough at academic conferences, and have posters at conferences. So the goal of this entire project is to move up to having the actual dissemination of research. And so the agenda for today is to look at the first research proposal, work readiness of students, to talk about the concept of Manuscript Monday, and any other basis includes review of any other research project people want to talk about today, brainstorm what should be in our next meeting, and I'm inviting anybody who hasn't done so as yet to register. So let me just stop for a second. Is there anybody here? Let me stop. see if there's anybody else who's waiting to join. Okay, so we have 7 people plus me, right? Is there anybody who, let me just go back to it for a second. It's here. Oh no, it's open twice. Right. Oh, I see why. It's open twice and here, I was just going to say, I put it in the chat. In case you haven't registered, the form is mostly for those who, the form is to allow you to essentially register your interest in getting updates. So you'll get a notification when the next meeting is and the like. All right, so let me go back to my screen, share screen. Yeah, here. All right, from current slide. All right, so let's review the project so far. Oh, note I have that. Okay, and we're going to look at these readiness studies. So note I actually have that. I shouldn't have opened that at the time. All right, so let's look at this. So I was actually hoping that these students would be here. So last semester I had 3 students in my class do this particular project for a grade. Sabrina has actually been coming to the presentations. She came last week, Monday. So I'm not sure why she isn't here today, but hey. So this is the project they came up with. This is their slideshow, not mine. So this is what they presented. So what they presented was that there's a number of students enrolled in universities, a growing number due to the competitiveness of the labor market. Employers actually look at the work readiness of students to determine who to hire. They made some indication that work readiness is defined as the extent to which graduates are perceived to possess work readiness skills. And these skills are values, behaviors, and skills that allow graduates to transition into the world of work. Universities, as we all know, play a vital role in equipping students with work-ready skills, and failures to do that may result in unemployed graduates or a skills gap. So the skill gap is a mismatch between what employers want and what job seekers actually possess in terms of their skills. And so studies have shown that employers often find that recent graduates lack the skills that they require. So the need for work-ready graduates is particularly felt in the IT industry, where the skills required are often changing, and those in computing definitely will know that to be true. And there is an increased demand for IT. It's one of the highest growing professions globally. However, some graduates are finding it difficult to find a job. That's true anecdotally from what I know in Jamaica. So for universities to properly meet the needs of the industry, it would be good for them to be aware of the desired skills. So this is the problem statement by the 3 students in my class. Anecdotal evidence suggests that undergraduate computing students are concerned about their work readiness. Universities sometimes fail to adequately prepare students for the world of work. Students who are not work ready may find it increasingly difficult to find gainful employment upon graduation. They say that the purpose of their study is to determine if undergraduate students are work ready by identifying the skills gap that exists between them and their employers. And the study seeks to answer 2 questions. What skills gap exists between computing undergraduate students and their employers? And to what extent are computing undergraduate students work ready? So the study could be of practical significance. They say that administrators at undergraduate institutions may decide to alter the skills taught to students based on the results of the study. Seems to me that I would probably alter that to say curriculum designers. I mean, I think administrators are also important. The students may also decide to learn the skills that employers identified on their own. So obviously, we could also add that this project could have theoretical significance if it could add to the body of knowledge about what is known on, readiness of work readiness of students in developed countries such as Jamaica. Something like that may be part of the significance, but they haven't mentioned that here. But clearly, this project is more of practical significance. The delimitation according to these students is that they're looking at third and fourth year students majoring in computer science or enterprise systems that are enrolled at SKIT at the Papine campus, as well as the employees who have recently employed graduates in Kingston and St. Andrew. And they define some key terms: skills gaps, work readiness, work ready skills, and then they tell us succinctly what the methods are. So they say that this is the population, UTech SKIT students and employers. I think you should probably put Jamaican employers, but both students and employers will be required to complete online surveys or interviews. Students' work readiness will be measured using a modified version of the work readiness scale proposed by Cabela et al. 2011 that is used to measure the work readiness of college graduates.
Excuse me.
So I'm going to stop right there. Yes.
I'm just wondering if you were supposed to be sharing.
Oh, I wasn't sharing?
I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was sharing. Oh, I wish. Oh, I thought I was sharing. Wasn't I sharing? Oh dear, share screen. I thought I was sharing. Are you seeing it now? Oh, sorry. I thought I was sharing. So just to show you again, not going to go through it again. So I just went through this. I just went through this. So this is the project, and I was essentially paraphrasing and sometimes reading. They had a background, then they had a problem statement, the purpose, their research questions, significance, delimitations, key terms, and the methods. So I said I was going to stop there because I don't really want to spend too much time. So then they actually have they split the literature review in the presentation to work readiness and importance, work ready skills, perceptions of graduate work readiness, in terms of students' perceptions, employees' perceptions, and then they conclude by saying that IT and computer science graduates often lack soft skills, but have sufficient technical skills. Very little research has been done on the perceptions of graduates on their own work readiness, specifically those studying IT and computer science, and research surrounding work readiness of IT and computer science locally is also insufficient. So that's the end of their chapter 2. It would take a little while to go through this. And then they have chapter 3, which don't think, well, they were quite sophisticated. So they basically want to do a mixed method study where they would interview computer representatives and do a questionnaire for the students. And they wanted to do stratified random sampling of the students. And they had some way to decide the numbers, and they wanted to look at 30 companies. And of course, they would, they have a approach to the data collection and storage. They talked about the ethical considerations, and then they had their references. So this is what they presented at the end of the semester to me. So I'll stop there for the moment. Yeah, so sorry, I actually thought I was sharing. Right. So any comment or question on what I've shared so far? Sorry, let me add. Do you think this is an interesting project? Is it relevant? Anything? Don't all speak at once. Oh, Denise says very relevant. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I don't know if I did it all too fast. Was I too fast by going through that? Well, I have one thought based on what I just shared, which I didn't think about when I was first looking at it. One of the things I said is that based on the literature, the students in technical disciplines tend to be technically competent, but are less so in the soft skills. I find that interesting because I was actually involved in a number of sessions. Sorry, I was one of the people involved in development of a degree for skit, and we interviewed industry players in Jamaica. And I remember there definitely was some concerns about soft skills, which include things like written and oral communication and ability to interact with people. But there was also some concerns about um, having the students being aware of some of the most up-to-date technology. So there was also some concerns about some of the technical competencies. So just making that remark. So there were concerns on both of those fronts. So I see that two people here think that is a appropriate project. So I also think that this is a good project. So my thinking is that this could be a project that we could actually roll out this summer, meaning. And so one of my first questions is, if this was going to be something that's worth researching, should we look at only computing students, or should we, and which computing students, or should we expand it beyond computing? I'm just waiting for anybody to say anything. Let's see. Let's see. There's a. Okay. Oh, we have people. Um. Okay, so one person has typed that we have gotten back reports from university players who find that the use of initiative and soft skills are rather lacking in our students. Okay. I think I believe it should be extended beyond computing. Okay. And all right. Well, the question I have then is if, okay, so there's another comment, especially where practical skills should be accompanied by people handling skills. If the students want to become managers and good team players. Okay. Um, Val Mac, you have your hand up. You can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Susan. How
Hi.
you? How you doing? I believe it should be expanded beyond the computing students. Yes, I've said so. Because what you do find out, we have other courses of study
Mm-hmm.
at the institution, and they have where they do go out for this experiential learning. They go out on practicum,
Mm-hmm.
and believe that feedback is very important. I believe that those students ought to be included.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hey man, thanks. Well, I would say, all right. I would say that there are two ways to do this kind of project right now. So if we want to do a project that's going to include more than one discipline, we need to decide what the scope of the project. But let me go now to what I found it interesting. So let me go back to just this presentation. So what I did this afternoon was I went back to here. So I looked at this, and these students said that they wanted to look at a modified version of the work readiness scale proposed by Cabela et al. So I decided to go and look up. Wait, let me see. I'm probably not sharing. Am I sharing screen still?
No, you're not.
Okay, so let me share screen again. So, hold on. Oh, I know. Stop share. I need to do it a different way. Okay. Wait, what is happening today? Thing doesn't screen. All right, let's not do it that way. No, anything I'm doing this is not. Today, this doesn't want to cooperate with me at all. At all. Share screen. And if I go to the screen, I should be able to. Should be able to. Oh, I see why. End of slideshow. That's why. Okay. So if I go back to this, I'm about to show you how I got here. So earlier today, I started looking up. So we have this particular, which one is it? This one. So there is this particular project, Calavera Walker. So let me just look at my references again. So let's look this up. Okay, so I'm going to go further, but let me go back. I'm going to look it up on I'm going to look it up on Google Scholar in a second. But this particular study, which the students had suggested, actually what they've done is the particular study was a mixed method study where they first did a qualitative study trying to identify what matters in terms of work readiness. And then they came up with a quantitative survey, and then using some statistics went down to a 64 item work readiness scale, which is divided into 4 components: personal characteristics, organizational acumen, work competence, and social intelligence. And in the paper, they actually discussed, because this was done by some people in Australia, they compare it to a previous Australian work readiness study, which only had essentially like the work competence and the social intelligence. They didn't have the personal characteristics and organizational acumen. So you would say that this particular study would have had impact because it added these 2 areas, which wasn't in previous studies. So I'm just now going to go, hopefully, yes, we're here. Do that. So I'm going to look up that particular paper. Right, so I just typed in the paper in Google Scholar, and I'm bringing up the paper. So this paper is available online, the whole paper. You should be seeing my screen. So here's the paper. The paper is the work readiness scale, developing a measure to assess work readiness in college graduates. And as I said, they looked at, they did a qualitative study first, and then came up with a 167 item scale and used that for 251 graduates across a range of disciplines. And then after doing some statistical analysis, they wheeled it down to 64 items, which explain 45% of the variance, which is not bad. In other words, it gives an indication that those 4 types of items, as in these 4 types, actually make a difference as to how ready people are. And then what's interesting, if I go back to this, you see that this study is actually cited by 173 other studies. So it actually is what is called a seminal, or what's another word for that? A seminal study. Many people have work readiness. So if you just put in work readiness anytime, we see that, interestingly, this comes up first out of 2 million results. But there's a lot of studies relating to work readiness. So clearly, and if you even look recently, there's even 113,000 results through Google Scholar. And since 2020, there's 46,000. Even since this year, there's already 16,900 that are available through Google Scholar. So not only do we in this group right here think this is relevant, people are still publishing on this very important topic. And given that there's more and more people actually even saying that university is not worth it, and also saying that I've seen papers that says that even something as much as 20% of universities will fail in the next few years. And some of that was even being predicted before COVID. Having university equip students for work readiness, I would think is more relevant than ever. So going back to the actual paper that we have in mind, I wanted to know, so we could spend some time looking at the paper, but what I wanted to know, I'm going to ask the whole group here. So there already is, in fact, look, this paper has been cited by 173 scholars at least. And so you can actually easily look and find and just go through all those particular papers. So it has been used a lot. is this necessarily the work readiness scale that we should use in Jamaica for such a study? Yes. Is this Valerie Mackenzie?
I am.
Good. Go ahead. I wasn't sure it was you. Go ahead and make your point.
I just let me just step back to the term work readiness.
Yes.
Very recently, when we had that strategic plan, that meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a big point there, and the whole back and forth thing. There was a discussion there because one person was saying, okay, you talk, what do you mean by work readiness? Because when you talk about UTech having work ready student, or UTech doesn't have work ready student. So we had a big thing going back and forth. And because of that, it is making me now wanting to look at what do we really mean by work readiness. Seeing you projecting your screen there, I saw work readiness employability, work readiness something else, and work readiness something else. So I guess we really need to define what we mean by work readiness first and foremost, because we have been using that term that we do have work ready graduates. So I think that is something we need to look at first and decide where we're going when we talk about work readiness. Thanks.
Okay. I think we do need to define work readiness. What as a I don't know, let's just talk informally. Uh the thing is we all know informally what work readiness means. The question is how can we measure it? So work readiness means the extent to which somebody is perceived as being ready for the world of work, which is different than whether they're actually ready. So that's why I like the definition that was put by the students. The question is, how can we measure that? And so that's back to my open-ended question. So let me go to Google Scholar. So we could start by looking at that paper. So maybe I will start with that paper. So let me go back. Let's look.
I am certain that there are psychometric tests out there to do that measurement.
No, it's not psychometrics. It's metrics. It's not psychometric. That's what we are. This paper is the paper. Sorry, let me just try to explain again. This paper is the most cited paper, and people use this scale in studies of work readiness. So this paper by Cleber, Walker, and Fuller, I don't know how to pronounce these people, is the most cited paper, and other people use it in measuring work readiness. So here are the 64 items. I'm not sure by looking at this if this is a Likert scale. So the 64 items that they use to measure work readiness are here in this particular thing. So these are the 64 items, but let's go back to what you're saying. So I don't mind your question. Let me see. The thing is, I'm sure every research paper is going to define work readiness a little bit different. But let's go back to this paper to see what they did. Somebody had a comment in the chat. Yeah, man. Defining the thing is, you're going to come up with a working definition of work readiness in the paper when you write a literature review. That's going to be an important part of any paper, for sure. So I was just saying I'm working with what my students had put as a tentative evaluation, but so for example, this paper says work readiness, according to Calibre et al., can be defined as which the extent to which graduates are perceived to possess the attitudes and attributes that make them prepared or ready for success in the work environment. So I'm sure if you read the lots of papers, remember to say that there were 2 million, we will see different definitions. And this to me seems like a beginning working definition. Is whether students or graduates possess attitudes and attributes that make them prepared or ready for success at work. Like every single working definition in research, there are going to be different definitions. And so certainly that's something. But in the context of what I want to do today, I was going to say, let's just go with one definition of work readiness and now say, let's say we accepted this one, but maybe I should pause. anybody in the meeting wants to propose an alternate one. See, typically what you would do is read the literature. I didn't want to spend time on that, no, but we could if we wanted to. Do you want us to look at different papers to look at that right now? Because let me give you the context here. What the two papers that I found that seemed to be, well, what this paper did was basically they asked people, they interviewed people to find out, as in organizations who hire people, what do they want from people at work? And that's how they came up with a whole lot of attributes. And that's how they eventually got this questionnaire that had 4 areas: personal characteristics, organizational acumen, work competence, and social intelligence. I think typically when I, as a young person, thought of work readiness, I only thought of competence. Then as I got older, I also realized that social intelligence. And now that I'm working at UTech, I definitely agree that organizational acumen and personal characteristics are also key. So just from an anecdotal sort of thing, I think, oh, this sounds sensible to me. But the point is, even though it sounds sensible, it doesn't mean that it is the only characteristics of work readiness. But let me see now. Oh, 2 people have their hand raised, so let's go to the chat. I am going to. How do I have to stop sharing because I can't see who has raised hands. Denise Ramara, please go ahead and make your
Hi,
comment.
good afternoon, everyone. Thanks
Good
for the
afternoon.
workshop, Susan. Sounding
You're
good.
welcome.
I think getting the employer's opinion for the particular industry that your students are going into would be important. What do you think?
I think so too. So just back to the frame. There are two things. So let's go back to what the students that I had. They were very eager and they did a really good job in my mind. They proposed that, let's just take what they proposed. They proposed that we could do a study of skit students as well as interviews of employers to find out what is perceived as work readiness. So they wanted to know what the students perceived and they wanted to know what the employers perceived. That's what they wanted to know. And then was there a gap? So certainly, I think to not do that would definitely, in our context, be missing something. So I think there's always going to be a need, no matter how many, in my opinion, no matter how many papers are published, because for each industry, for changing times, I mean, certainly pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, in my opinion, without doing any reading on this topic, like to be variations in what is perceived as what is most important at different times. Yes, but yeah, certainly interviewing employers is key, and that's what shows in the literature. All the literature shows that what everybody have done is interviewed employers. So yes, I agree completely. Go ahead, Valerie McKenzie, still have your hand up.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Is my hand?
it's still up, so I just
I'm
thought you
sorry.
had a yes. Mr. Wett, welcome. We're looking at the possibility of doing a project on work readiness of students, university students, as a
excellent idea.
it was not my idea. It was I think it was my best set of students last semester, and they didn't want to carry it forward as their major project. And it's clearly, and they actually formulated it quite well. I mean, I did give them some feedback, so I thought that this would be a good first step for something to do because it could be of value to the university community as well as to the world of work. And if you're actually thinking about the meeting that we just came from this morning, perhaps I should have raised it in that meeting. Clearly, this will be relevant to industry. So, yes.
Yes, certainly. All right. I'm just passing through, going into another session, but really want to commend you on the work and the team. And that sounds like a very good idea.
Yes. So, Right. So what I did quickly, and I don't know which way I should go with this. So I spent a little time, so I could either show you how I got to these, just telling everybody here. Are you seeing my screen? Or I didn't share a screen again. Let me share a screen. Share screen again. So what I did earlier today was I looked at a number of studies, and I can show you how I selected these. I said, oh, here are at least 4 studies of interest. So this study we just looked at already, right? Just quickly. And then I said, but are there any other studies? So I found a study in 2016 that actually used this same work readiness thing, and they looked to see if there was any factors that predicted these work readiness. And they used 3 different areas, and they found that there was a strong correlation between emotional intelligence and psychological capital and work readiness, which was interesting. And then there was another study that was published in 2018 that focused on IT people in a internship program. So that fits in with, I think it was what Valerie McKenzie was saying. And they looked to see what they actually were focusing specifically on the communication skills. But what was interesting when I looked at the paper is what the employers said they wanted in students was quite different than what it wasn't a good mix with. It was way beyond just the communication skills. But this is actually a very interesting paper, because what is interesting about this paper is they really show that there is a need to craft pedagogy based on what employers are saying. So this actually, it was a limited study, but interesting by itself. And then there's this paper. So there's this paper published in 2019 that also came up with a work readiness competence scale. And they said at the end they also did a mixed method study, and they came up with 53 items, which covered 4 dimensions and 10 sub-dimensions. And they did it by interviewing professionals and managers in 7 Asia Pacific countries. So this particular paper definitely referenced this paper and many others, and they came up with this scale. So perhaps I should go and look at this. Let me see. How do I get out of this? I should just do this. So copy. Sorry. Let me ignore all and just say copy. Right. So before I go any further, so let me go back to this. Since my idea here is to also make sure that the students see where I'm coming from, and we have a number of students here. And I want students to interact, guys. It's not just we have a number of lecturers here, and we have some students here. I think most the students I can recognize by name. Before I just type it in, before I show you this particular paper, which I opened earlier and looked at, which has a scale, in fact, I'll show you for 2 seconds. So this paper, just showing it, just like the other one, has the actual, in the paper, they do describe their methodology, but in the paper they show, where is it now, towards the end, they actually have why can't I find it right now? You're seeing the screen, right? Yes, I see screen sharing. They show that, I'm trying to find it. Is this it? I'm trying to find where the actual, oh, here it is. So this is the actual final items. So it's a little bit funny. So these are the statements. So they have, if you scroll through here, they literally have all the 53 items here in a list. And so like the sections here are core business skills, communication skills, IT skills, system thinking skills, teamwork and political skills, cognitive skills. foundation skills with things like numeracy and literacy, innovation and creative skills, leadership skills, self-management skills, and that's where it stops. So at a cursory glance, we can see that these set of skills, which might have some overlap with the other work readiness, you can see it's not the same. So one of the first things I wanted to point out to everybody here, because I've been looking at a lot of research papers over time, is a lot of us, myself including, tends to approach methods as if it's simple. And methods, not only is that my weakest area, a lot of persons approach the methods very quickly, when it's very important that we determine that we make a serious attempt to what is called stand on the shoulders of giants, see what has already been published, and see critically what we can be using from that. So one of the things I would say very openly is we have at least 2 skills, maybe there are more. There are at least 2 work readiness skills that the approach was similar, meaning what they did was they interviewed persons who employ people, and then they came up with a questionnaire and they did a bunch of statistics in order to reduce the amount of items to say, here is a work readiness skill. So before I go any further, because I think I'm going faster than I meant, my question to everybody, I want to ask the students. So let me stop sharing again. So have students, Jenny, Tressel, Alex, Damain, I think Miss Shing might be a student, and Dennis Strong may be a student, I think. To all of you, do you have any comment on the project? And what I could do right now is I could slow down. So when I slow down is, where would we start in looking at the project? Because I was thinking of starting by saying, okay, if we accept that this is a good project, because I'm about to assign us all something to do for next time before we finish today. If we agree that we're working on this as a team project, as a lesson for all of us, with an intention to actually execute the project and publish a project before the end of the year. So if it is that we like that idea, in fact, let's just go with a show of hands. Who likes that idea? So I may try to find where I can raise my hand, since I obviously think that's a good idea. Or can I do that as the host? I don't know. Anybody else? So it's only me and Valerie Mackenzie? Well, we know that David had said so before, but he has gone back to another meeting. So am I to take it that, oh, Jenny, you think it's a good idea? So let me ask the students the question. Is it that you don't have the time, or you just don't think this is worthwhile? Just, I mean, no, there are no wrong answers here. You can either type or talk. You don't have to raise your hand. Right now, I'm opening up for anybody to say anything that they think. Okay, so yes, I can understand that you may not have the time to organize a project. But anybody else? Oh, in fact, let me ask another question. Of the people who are here, how many people are students? Can you, Mrs. Mackenzie and Dr. Fisher, you can lower your hand. Of the students, I'm kind of curious. Are all of you major project students right now?
I'm a major project student, Professor.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Janelle. Right, I'm supervising you. Anybody else? Or let me say it a different way. Is there anybody here who's not a major project student? But the students don't want to talk or type. You guys are not talking. But I just take it that you guys are just shy.
Constable and Patterson are part of my major project group, Professor.
Okay, I see here that makes sense. All right. All right, so I'm going to go back to what I was doing. So let's go back to here. So I need to share a screen first. Make sure I'm having everybody participate. Share screen. Right. So if you go back to so I just did something rather simple. So if you go to Google Scholar, I love Google Scholar as a way to find good references for learning. So I noticed that this particular paper had 173, like this paper has 177. These are clearly like papers with a lot of references. Another one written in 2012 is about project-based learning, but right now I'm not really too focused on that. So this is work integrated learning. So there are actually lots of papers with a lot of important things. So if I was focusing on building capacity for work readiness, but at the moment, I just want to know about work readiness. So I think this is a good place to start. So work readiness. So this work readiness, once I click on the 173, I see 173 and I just started looking through. So I'm looking through and seeing which of these interest me directly. So I started to look, and there are many papers that clearly could be very interesting. I actually glanced at this one based on the topic. Are there differences in the knowledge, skills, and personal attributes needed for the different salary levels? I was scrolling through. I actually looked at this paper because it intrigued me, because it said that the factors influencing work readiness are exploratory study. And given there had been already so many papers on this, I was wondering what this was about. And it's actually referenced in my list at the end. And then I found this paper, which is a work readiness integrated competence model. Because I was thinking, are there any other work readiness skills? So I found this one, and that's how I got this. So which leads me to my big question. So in addition to the question that people have brought up as to how do you define work readiness, which is definitely something worth considering, if we can define it or describe it, how do we know how to measure it? So what both the two papers I brought up today have basically said is that they interviewed the employers and then they came up with a quantitative scale to measure graduates, and then did some statistical assessment in order to say which of these things are actually uniquely contributing to actual work readiness. And then they came up with a scale. So then my next question is, so we have at least two good, supposedly, work readiness scales. How do we know which of them to use, or should we combine them? I'm now asking this as an open-ended thing. Open for discussion.
I believe, sorry, if I may.
You can go ahead.
I believe that we can do some literature search on the scales and to see, because of course we would see where there the validation and the reliability, the validity and the reliability of these scales would have come into play, and a lot would have been done there. And of course, we could do some literature search, and that would tell us, because people would always be using and measuring, and we look at even those studies that those scales have been used in, and look at the impact factor or whatever. So I think the first thing is just do a literature search on those scales.
Okay, I would agree that that's definitely one key area. So a literature review, including reading. So would actually read the papers carefully, because in the papers they would actually also report on the robustness of the study. So they would tell you the method that they use, and you could read and carefully assess if, in our estimation, that study was done in a in a scientific manner, in a robust, relevant way. Would the university's definition of graduate attributes be valuable? It might be. I'm not sure, because the thing about graduate attributes is that the same as work readiness. So, for example, if you're doing a study, I think maybe one of the questions we could ask, you know, I'm just brainstorming here. One of the questions we could ask is there, you know, maybe what we could do is see if there's a relationship between graduate attributes and work readiness. That actually sounds like something that is worth doing. Alex Donna says, I would look at which one of them matches our situation best in terms of industry that was measured and use that. Yes, so here's what I think I like what Alex said. So one thing we need to do is to carefully assess the papers themselves. And then, as Valerie McKenzie says, she's a tutor in the College of, is it the College of Health Sciences? Am I saying the right one? The Joint College, no, the Joint Colleges of, long name. The School of Oral Health, right? Is that the right school?
College of Oral Health, yeah.
Oh, the College of Oral Health, yes. Right. So in addition to that, I think what you say is key, looking at the literature. So we could see how, to what extent those papers are used, the assessment other people give of the quality of those skills, to see to what extent those tools actually are found to be reliable and valid by other researchers. So my first step is reviewing the papers critically. My second step is reviewing other literature about, so first, finding as many excellent work readiness skills, including the two I just identified, and evaluating them. My second step is looking at literature, examining those work readiness skills. And then my third is exactly what Alex says. I would probably say it a little bit differently than him, is at the end of it, perhaps we could do what he says, look at the two of them, or it could be three of them, and say which one matches our situation. But another possibility is we could use elements of more than one skill. Now, I don't have an answer right here, I'm just saying there are different possibilities, but I certainly think that Alex has a really good point, because which one really matches our skill? And here's the thing now, Alex, because I have actually been in interactions with students and industry, it seems to me that perhaps both of them have different elements that are relevant to our setting based on listening to what people say. But it's not a trivial thing. So what I wanted everybody who has time to do between now and the next meeting is to look at those things. Anybody has anything to add to those 3 points? But I really like, so the other thing is we need to decide what are our research questions. So if you go back to this paper, I need to share screen again. So trying to remember to do what I'm doing, share screen. Right, so if I go back to the students' work, and they had their research questions is, what skills gap exists between computing undergraduate students and their employers? I think this needs to be reworded perhaps, but what's the skills gap? I think it's really the needs of their employer or something. And to what extent are computing undergraduate students work ready? Perhaps there could be a research question that looks at if there is a relationship between what was it again? What's the right term for this? Because UTech does have a term. The attributes. I forgot the actual formal term in the chat. UTech has a nice term for it. Right, the graduate attributes. So for all the students in every single UTech has a general description of graduate attributes, and then for every degree, there's actually a philosophy. There's also general objectives for the degree, and there's also a list of graduate attributes for each degree. And there's a university definition in general of graduate attributes. So we could look at that because I think that could be interesting. Yes, so those are my thoughts right now on this particular matter. Somebody have sorry, my phone is dead and my timepiece at UTech is not working. Can anybody tell me the time?
12 minutes past 6.
Okay, all right, thanks. So we're been going for an hour. All right, so my question right now though is we could take a break on this perhaps. Okay, so no, I can go on to one more thing here. So just let's just show you two. Let me do one more thing here with this share screen. Yeah, I had all these things ready, so let me just show them. Here, so right, so right, so here is the actual literature review. So right, so the students had an introduction, and then what is really nice about their project is that they first properly introduced the project. Sorry, we're ready. Let me just, the way how they submitted the assignments to me, when they submitted the literature review, it was, I asked them to put the chapter 1 after. So just to show you, there actually is a chapter 1. So here's the chapter 1, which is at the end of the literature review because of how they submitted it for the grade. So they had a background, and then after the background, then they had the problem statement, the purpose, which we saw in the slideshow before, the research question, the significance, the definitions of terms, and the methods. So that was what they submitted initially with these references. And then they went ahead and did the literature review. And the literature review had an introduction to that's what was going to be in the paper, work readiness and importance, work ready skills, skills gap, perspectives on work readiness, and the role of university in providing work ready graduates. And so what is really impressive is that they really had quite a bit of references. And in their first draft of doing this paper, they were very general. And then since we're focusing on computing, I told them that they should focus on the computing aspects of work readiness. So there's more on computing in general in this overall review than not. But they went through the importance of work readiness. Then they went to what are work ready skills. It includes at least technical and soft skills. And that part is for sure. So it's at least hard skills and soft skills. And that tends to be what people tend to think of it as. And then they basically do some discussion of all of that, and then talk about that there's this skills gap where people don't have all the skills that they need, and talks about the perceptions from students and then from employees. And then they talked about the role of university students in providing work ready graduates. And then they had their conclusion. I like to, instead of calling it conclusion, I prefer that it be called a summary, because in my mind, at the end of a literature review, what you really have is a reflection of what you found from the literature. I think that the conclusion doesn't really come until you actually have answered your research questions. But they give a nice summary of what they found, and then they have their long list of references. So we certainly have a good start because they have done quite a bit of work and fairly good writing on the topic. And so that's where we are with that right now. And they even did, I'll even show you this for 2 seconds. This was all part of the project. Oops, right. They even did let me try to make this bigger. They did a ethics application, and so they, of course, would have had the aims of the projects to determine, if the students are ready are work ready by identifying the skills gap. Um, and then they spoke about where it'll be done at UTech. They will do a survey. It's actually, they talked about the students present will be asked to complete an online questionnaire. Company representatives will be asked to participate in a brief interview. And then they talked about third and fourth year students. And the second group is the companies that are hiring these students. And they say that they're going to interact with the students through WhatsApp to get them to participate. And they're going to call or email companies. And they're going to have the questionnaire available for 6 weeks, and the companies will be given a week. That sounds a bit short to me, but who knows? I think that could be modified. And then they want to do systematic random sampling. I would perhaps change that, but it's certainly a possible way of. The only way you can do this, though, you definitely need permission to the university to get a list of the students so that you could actually do some kind of random sampling. But is this possible? There actually is a system at all universities after you get ethics approval to get a systematic random sampling or some kind of random sampling, and then you contact typically through emails or SMS from that list. So to do that, you probably would need some kind of funding because it would be costly to be contacting. Once you get only through emails, maybe it's emails you're going to use. And if you know that if that's UTech, the emails could be inaccurate. Phone numbers at UTech tend to be more correct for students. They're going to do convenience and sampling. And I would probably suggest instead of convenience that they do purposive, because if they wanted to look at, let's say, only computing, you want only the companies that hire computing students. And so I would suggest that they change this to purposive sampling so that you get the companies that hire the people that you want, rather than just take the first company that you find that's willing. And then they had this recruitment method that I think could probably be looked at again, so I won't spend any time on it. And then they said the same thing again, and they said they're not going to violate the privacy of the participants. And they talk about password protection and identifying information to ensure the privacy of participants and backups being done, and talk about the analysis used. So they're going to do this according to them, the same work readiness scale proposed by Cabrilla et al. 2011. And they're going to write a research paper and do a presentation. Interesting. They actually haven't told us about the actual statistical analysis here. That's actually missing. And then they tell us what they're going to do. It's going to be reviewed periodically. Duty of care. Make sure people are not experiencing undue stress. No adverse effects are expected. And if there is premature termination, a report will be made detailing the errors, and participants will be sent a copy of the final research paper, I guess, if they want it. So that's that project. So I'm going to stop here. So you'll see an outline of a project that I thought was a fairly decent project for third year students to do. So that is where it is right now. And so my proposal is that we look at doing this. So since people here have said we could do it outside of computing as well, I guess my next question is, maybe it would be for the next meeting, but okay, so let me first talk about the scope. So I'm just asking for discussion. Are we thinking of all of UTech, or just the kind of areas that where people do internships? Because, like, for example, skit, we have an internship program, but very few students do the internships for a number of factors. So let's go with Valerie McKenzie. You had a point of view about it. What do you think?
I do think that we have several schools other departments, faculties, which have students who do internship. It can be a very large project. Well, we need to, what sort of sample size are we thinking about? Because it can be a very large project when you consider some of these schools with a very large number of students who do practicum, who do that practical aspect of things. What is it that we want? We have people in health who go, they do those clinicals. We have people in the tourist in SHTM. We have those in business. We have those in computing. So we very well might have to take a look to see what is it that we really want to do
Oh,
first.
so that sounds like a different project than my students conceived of. So that sounds like you're saying, are
Very well.
students ready for internship? Is that what you're really looking at?
Not
Because they say what work readiness as defined by Color et al. They were talking about work readiness of graduates, and I noticed that the students that we had were talking about work readiness of third and fourth year students.
fine. I okay. One of the reasons why I came up with that as well, we have our people, not for, we know that when we send them out on practicum, they're almost ready to go out.
Okay.
So that is what I was looking at, not particularly the graduates, but at that level, they're also ready because they would be going out, they do this period of internship and they graduate at the very, the same year or something. So that's practically it because they're ready to go out. So and that is where we do get that feedback, and a lot of times written feedback. Because here as well, I think that.
So you want to look at the work readiness of students for internship?
Right.
Oh,
that is
okay.
what I was thinking about.
Okay, I see.
That's what I was really thinking about, considering that is more or less where the students were looking, because they were not really looking at graduates.
Well, I'm going to suspect that, let's take dentists or dental hygienists or all those that are prepared by the School of Oral Health. I want to go and guess here. I'm going to guess that I don't know. I would guess that the kind of attributes that employers are looking at may be different than even say what, I don't know. Let's take architecture, since there's a person from School of Architecture here. Than what, say, I know that people in the Master of Architecture program must do some kind of, am I right, Denise? Must do some kind of employment before they become a licensed architect. Is that how it works? I think. So my question would be, are the attributes similar? I don't mean the competencies.
Okay. Okay, because I thought you were talking about competences, but when we look at that, the emotional intelligence, those soft skills, they're the same. They talk to you about, the employers talk about use of initiative, employers talk about communication or customer service. And I do believe, or probably we will just have to do a pilot to see what is it, are these common? What is it that we're looking for? And that is another new whole world again.
Okay.
So if we are talking about attributes, what is it that we mean? Is it ones
Well,
that
the only thing I think, I get where you're going. So here's my thinking. My thinking is two things. If you're going to do this, I almost think that if you're going to look at person's internship, we do that as a separate study than the ones of persons who are graduates, no matter what discipline it is, because I think it's almost like I almost think it's a different study, but maybe I'm wrong. Let me see what So Alex is a student, says that he wants to look at the work readiness of students for the working world. Okay.
So,
Right.
so
My only question, if you want to do it cross the entire university or more than one, if we interview the people who are doing internships, we're not comparing, it's apples and oranges.
yeah.
That's all I'm saying to everybody. So I'm saying if it was going to be, if we even have the time and the resources and all of what we need, if you have some groups that don't do internships, are you really comparing the same thing with the persons who don't have internships? That's all I'm saying. Would that be the same study?
It wouldn't be,
That's all I'm saying. So do we want to do both studies, or which study is more important? And they're actually both important.
They are both important, but I
Right.
think we might want to look first. What is it that we do first? Because one of the reasons I'm here talking about this is that for those who do go out and they do internship or practicum, whatever you call it, and you get that feedback, these are the things these employers are saying.
Okay, so here's what I want to suggest then. I think I agree with you. My suggestion is that this might sound a bit crazy, so I don't know if you guys think I'm a bit, but I tend to think broadly. It sounds almost like we're proposing two studies. So we could do a study looking at what um, internship, what is it, employers of interns say about the work readiness of students. And we could do another study looking at the work readiness of graduates.
Sure.
Because since across UTech, not everybody does internship. You cannot do a cross university thing of internship. It's just not realistic. Not every program at UTech has an internship as a required component. But I think that I agree with you. I wasn't thinking about it, but I think it would be very valuable to do that as a systematic study. So I think it would be valuable.
Yes.
But certainly what we need is more people to be involved in the study. Or maybe we don't need more. We need committed, competent people.
When we talk about a systematic study, which can be a standalone, we also look at a systematic study being the, background for the literature review. So it
Right.
can be used, right? So it does not preclude us from doing a further study, which might be a mixed method or a qualitative or whatever it's study after that.
What doesn't preclude what? I didn't quite
If
follow.
if we even do a systematic study, that can form the basis of the further study by being the background, by providing background literature for the further study.
Right. Here's what I'm going to suggest. Since most of the students who are here are apparently major project students and are maybe willing to come to the meeting but not do a lot of the background, work, we have a couple staff members. If you guys are interested, the question is, let's take Miss Denise Ramarak and Hall and Valerie McKenzie. The question is, are you actually wanting to be in this study?
And I think I saw Miss Dr.
Dr. Fisher is here too. She knows she can be in the study if she wants. I'm speaking to her all the time. The reason why I didn't ask her directly, she can answer, is that I know she's involved in many studies.
Oh yeah, I know. And her hand was up initially when you were asking. So
her hand was up because she thinks it's a worthwhile study. So I'm asking all lecturers here. So Dr. Fisher,
I'm interested.
Okay. All right. So I guess what I could do.
Yeah. Can
Yes,
can
yes,
I
yes.
can I answer you, Miss Muir?
Sure.
I'm interested. I think it's a good idea, and I could look at it from the standpoint of the course of study that I work with. So yes, I'm interested in it, but I'm not so sure about your timeline.
Okay.
So you can consider me. I think I learn a lot. I will.
Okay. No problem. Right. What I was going to say is that if you're going to do this, oh, Lisa, you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say similarly, it's the time for me.
It's a time. Okay.
Right. But to the extent that I can be involved
Yes.
and have the time, then I would be willing. But
Okay.
again, it's the timeline for me. Certainly up to August is really
Tight.
very much so.
Okay. Right. So what I was going to say is, I don't know if you guys, sorry, I know Dr. Facey Shaw's email. I don't know if Denise and Valerie has registered, but do I have permission to email you?
Fine, go ahead, Sue.
Sure.
Great.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is I will email, and any student who wants to be on the project in terms of work to do for next week, you can indicate whether by email or right now privately or publicly in the chat. Otherwise, you can come back next time, because I'm going to just park the whole project for right now, because it seems to me that most of the work needs to go forward before we go further. Has to be yeah, man, thanks for coming. Has to be done outside of the meeting.
Okay.
So
Bye.
bye. Yeah, man. So my last thing, oh no, I need to share screen again. Share screen. So I'm here, and let's go to this and this. Well, where is, okay, I'm gonna go back to this. All right, so if I go back on current slide. So I was saying that I found two papers, and perhaps there are others, these two papers, this more recent one and this other one, that both have graduate work readiness measurements. And so we can do research and development that's valuable by forming teams. And so in the context of, based on discussion so far and even some of the students, I think that looking at this project would be important interdisciplinary project, so we can collaborate on it and write our journal paper, hopefully by 2020. And then here's the thing. The only way you're going to actually be able to do research is actually to have a manuscript eventually. So there are different approaches. One of them is in the literature is something called a writing accountability group, which basically means that we hold each other accountable. And then there are different kinds of online tools that you can use to support that, including anything like VoiceThread, which I used for the first time last week in a FAILS workshop, and FocusMate, which I heard about today in a little online training, which you can hold anybody accountable on anything, not accountable. You and somebody else work at the same time online on a task. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that whether it's Monday or another day, the only way you're going to get writing done is to allocate time for writing. So that was my sense. And the last thing I want to do essentially is to brainstorm as to where to go with this lab. So I was thinking that we'd have at least one project that we do. So my question to everybody here is, what do you think should be the what do you think should be the focus of this? I actually want to do at least, so on Wednesdays I look at actual major projects and give feedback, and on Mondays we're looking at one or two, and right now it's definitely going to be one major research topic that we go through until we finish it. That's my thinking. So any thoughts? I see something in the chat I did not see before. Let's see, I can stop share.
Oh.
Yes, so Alex, definitely. So as I said in the introduction, I am hoping that all students at UTech who have any interest, this is an open thing. Once you are really, if you're a second year and above, we're really not expecting a first year student. Once you are a UTech student or you're a researcher across the world, you can come to this thing. So yes, everybody is welcome to come and observe. And the idea is that hopefully you should learn in the process and you kind of feel free to talk, make suggestions and all of that. So yes, you're welcome to come even if you're not going to be part of the actual research team. So everybody is welcome if you find this topic interesting or at least important, because I don't see how any of us couldn't find it important. Since everybody here who's here today is either a student or a teacher, so and most of the students either don't have jobs or perhaps are looking for better jobs. So I think we're all interested in this whole topic, and therefore I said, that's why don't we use this topic going forward. So yes, Alex, you're welcome to come every week. So yeah, so I've actually finished my task for today. As far as I'm concerned, I know we're a bit early, but I have so many other things doing. So my question now is, do you any of you have any suggestions or feedback? Because basically what I want to do now is to say, okay, so here are some goals for next meeting.
Okay, go ahead where the goals are concerned for next meeting. And I remember you said that you'll be emailing us.
Yeah,
So
man.
I'm
So I
looking
would say the goal would be I certainly would email since it's basically been the lecturers. I don't see any student actually saying they want to be involved in this part. All the lecturers who said they have interest, I would email them information. But what I see as the action items is to look at alternative definitions of work readiness, as was discussed, to look at the work readiness skills that I identified and see if there are any others that are also alternative tools, and to make an assessment. So doing some reading to make oh, hi Dennis Chung. Yes. Are you a lecturer then, Mr. Chung?
I was, but I'm no doctoral student.
Oh, you're a
Research
doctoral
student.
student. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Um, is
Um,
is this discussion so
it was
far of any
interesting.
interest?
It was just interesting to hear it. But a couple of questions that I was contemplating.
Go
One,
ahead.
you mentioned about work readiness of graduate students, and then there was another discussion about work readiness of internship. But there are two different matters. One is
Right.
at the student level from the school being prepared, and the other one is going into the job itself, right?
Well,
But I
actually, both of
suspect
them will be
that,
going into the job. So the work readiness
yeah,
of
both of them,
students,
yeah.
they are two different projects.
Well,
So
well,
one is
work
of this.
readiness of work readiness of student would be like, to me, would be preparing from the university level to go into the job, right? Whereas one going into the internship would be basically they'll be preparing you from the work aspect, not from the university aspect of the internship. Internship and the job itself would be a different preparation.
My understanding from internships in general is internships actually have two there are two things that happen in internships. So one is internships by
Right,
themselves help prepare students for work. But even
right,
so, there's preparation that universities need to do in order for the students to be ready for the internship. So
right,
I think that's what
correct.
Valerie McKenzie was trying to
point.
raise.
Okay,
Are the students ready for the internship?
May I say something?
Go
And
ahead.
okay.
I think and I'm hearing you, Dennis. However, I may I say that I have used the term internship, and I noticed that the students were very specific. They said third and fourth year students or whatever. But let me tell you what, it is more of an externship because we call ours externship because the students come back to us. It's not that they graduate and go out on that internship. It's really an externship. So they come back to us and we get that report and then we whatever, and then they can go on to their graduation. So there's a difference between externship and internship. Externship is done in the program. Internship is done when you graduate and you go out. But externship is you go and
Really?
then
All right.
the report comes
It,
in.
it, dep-
Okay.
sorry,
Right.
but your program isn't it required to do the internship in order to graduate?
Externship. They graduate after. They go out. They go out, they do their externship because it's a part, or you call it a practicum, it's a part.
I think that's a definitional thing.
Well, it's like a work study program then.
Yeah,
Right.
I went to Drexel University as a student, and all undergraduate students in engineering at Drexel, for example, which is well, either polytechnic or similar to like a UTech. They have a lot of what they call internships, and the internship tends to be at the end of the program and required for graduation. I think as to whether you want to call it internship or externship is a matter of definition, but the goal is you do that as part of the degree.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Oh, yeah, right. It's similar to a work study program as what I used to. In fact, I'm an engineer, by the way, and I have a company in Jamaica and one in the Eastern Caribbean. I'm president in the Eastern Caribbean. So,
Except a
which
work
is why
study
I could give
program doesn't have to be something that you're required to do to graduate. So there's an overlap in the concept, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
But some university like Polytech apply credits to your work study. That when you're working in the field, they apply credits to your graduation.
Right. As I'm saying, these are all matters of definition. So some universities call it internship, some call it externship, some call the same thing work study. And so we have two studies proposed. One study is looking at, do universities adequately prepare students for their initial work experience as part of the program, which at the moment I want to call internship. And then another research study could look at, do universities adequately prepare students for the world of work after they graduate?
All right. Okay. As I said, I'm an engineer.
Yes.
And when after I graduated from University of West Indies Engineering, we went straight into the work. But there were graduates from the then cast who were basically trained in working, right? Like similar work study. And then they came from the then cast into the university at second year level. So they were exempted from the introduction of engineering level into the working or practically working year, academics era then, in order to further learn the theories. All right.
Okay. Because they had more practical experience?
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So but we're not sure of the level of the training that they receive. Well, the level of the training that they receive at the end of the CAST program was not sufficient enough for them to get a degree. Right? So that is why they had to start from the second year in order to complete the degree program.
Oh, was that a diploma in engineering?
Yes, right. From UTech, from CAST at the time. Right? Well, my other question I was listening was that whether you want to do it in a qualitative or quantitative research. And to me, it geared more towards a quantitative research if you're going to come up with skills.
So, well, actually, I already had the proposal. So the proposal is quite clear. So the proposal, which, as what I'm saying, needs to be thought about afterwards, is there already are quantitative skills that exist. So it's either we're going to use the quantitative skills that exist. I just mentioned that there are two well composed, and if I was actually reading the papers today, not for the first time. So there are already excellent skills that exist, and you can actually reuse them or combine them, or you can do what those studies did. Hold on. What other studies did is they literally went first. They did a explore it, like they did a complicated mixed method as opposed to just what I want to call a multi-method. So I'm proposing just a multiple methods where you reuse, no, let's be really precise. So by the way, by going to the mixed methods conference, the people who are mixed methods, like what's his name? Can't remember his name right now. There are different definitions. So one way of defining the difference between multiple methods and mixed methods is that in a mixed methods study, one method have to inform the next method. If that doesn't happen, it's not a mixed method study. Sorry, by the way, Dennis, this is controversial, but the people who are experts in that, they all agree on this point. People who just use it, so a multiple method study will be one where you use more than one method.
Method, right?
So, for example, if to answer the question about what do employers believe what students need or what graduates need for work readiness, that could be a work that's answered by an interview. And if another question to say, what is the work readiness of UTech graduates in architecture, health, and computing, right? And we administer what are the existing questionnaires to those students. That is actually a multiple method technically, because we do an interview to answer one question, and we do an online questionnaire to answer the other question. For it to be a mixed method, you actually use more than one method to answer one research question in a particular way. With the two papers that I could share in the chat right now, if anybody wants to look at it, they both are definitely mixed method studies, because what they did was they did a qualitative study, and then they use that qualitative study to inform making up a questionnaire. And then they analyze the questionnaire after the students to figure out which of those items were actually predictive of work readiness. So it was a quite complex, both of them mixed method study.
Right. Interesting.
So to me, the simplest thing I was thinking of was just administering a quantitative study to students. The problem with that is that if you don't also either have an instrument of some kind for employers, we're going to miss something for sure. Because let's just go from my anecdotal experience. When I was listening in person just a year, no, it's almost 2 years now, almost 2 years ago, to employers in computing talk about what was missing, you can't get the same things from a questionnaire, no matter how well devised, as you get from an interview, in my opinion. So whether it's an interview or a focus group, so there's real value in actually talking to real people.
Well, it depends on the question that the amount of question that you ask them, right? So, or you pose to them.
Yeah, man, but when you do it in a way that is interactive, this is what literature says anyway. So a lot of people who are sort of what do you call it, quantitative, should I call it biased, tend to dismiss qualitative approaches. But the literature shows that unless the quantitative method is particularly robust, and even when it is, sometimes you miss what is called rich data, as in you don't get all the feelings and thinkings because you give these close-ended questions.
Okay.
But the point then is, though, it's not so simple, because at the end of it, you have to think about the cost of the project, how much time you have, what resources you have to do the project. So it doesn't
Right.
mean that necessarily not having an interview. It could be that we just do something where we do a questionnaire for employees and another questionnaire for students and answer the questions, and that's good enough.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Let me see what Alex says. I'll give you a second. Alex had a good story yesterday. He has had lots to
yeah.
say. Before Valerie, let me just read what Alex says. So Alex says, my take is that the project should be focused on student readiness. You mean for, I think he means for work instead of a local internship. What I would want to know from this study as if students are able to navigate the working world environment in order to land a job internship. Well, landing a job is actually different than, that's actually a different question. So if you want to ask a question about students' preparedness to get a job, that's actually different than work readiness. Yeah, that's a different.
But
No, it's actually a
but
different
in
question.
some
It's relevant, but it's not the same question. But I mean, do they know? Let me finish
There's
what you
something
said.
called employability readiness. So that would come under
Right.
something like
Yeah,
that.
employer readability. Do they know where to look for job opportunities? Do they know how to market themselves, whether local or abroad? How are past students doing after graduation? So Alex, you want to know lots of things, which are actually really excellent things to know. Were they able to land a job in their course of study? Where did they end up after graduation? How much percentage are happy where they are? Success rate, how did they do? So you want to do what it's called? What's the fancy name for this, Dr. Facey Shaw?
Business study.
Huh?
what's it?
Usually, if I may respond there, Alex.
No, there's a name for this whole thing, Lisa. Lisa, what's the name again?
You're talking about tracer study because we
Yes.
have to do
Yeah,
tracer study.
it's a full tracer study of the graduates. That's what he wants to do.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
So yeah, right. I was also referring you to what Alex has written, and I do understand. And yes, Alex, it is a tracer study. However, what we do find out is that the schools, they do keep abreast of what is happening, and that comes up when the schools, they do the quality assurance audit. Some of that comes up as well. Regarding you were talking about a quantitative study. However, what you might be able to get and would be able to get is for these people who go out on internship or go out into the workplace for practicum, whatever you call it, the report that is received by the department or by that coordinator, the report can tell you what some of these employers are saying. Because I've seen such reports which say, okay, fine. And I'm just not talking about my college, right? But these are reports that we probably could go around and look at the secondary, secondary data, find out from the colleges that do send out their students, what is the report saying? What is the feedback from employers? Because it's a lot of that goes on, which really inform the course of study or the changes that are made to courses of study. So that information is already in the institution. So, and I look at that as like cutting down the study a bit. So if we trace that track down that information, and then you do the seeing here, we see Alex is saying that he really wants to know if our students are work ready. Then you might give the students that questionnaire. I don't know. That's just like a suggestion, really.
Well, I think there's so many things going on here. And what's the term again? Is this the what's the thing? Employability?
Employability employability readiness.
Readiness, right. So the thing is employability readiness. In a sense, I think what Alex wants is which I actually think would be valuable is and I actually think students should be given this. Students should be given feedback as to what we're finding out of our studies. So, as in insofar as trace studies are being done, but
Yeah.
I think at the moment the goal of this particular project is not to do that entire tracer study. But I would agree with Alex that it's a good idea, but I think that's a little bit beyond what we're looking at today. That would be where I am, because that to do that well, it's going to take the kind of time and resources way beyond the scope of this particular project. At least in my mind. Does anybody agree with me?
It would be a different study altogether.
Yeah.
So one has to be very clear. What is it that we want to do? We have to be clear and we have to be focused. What is it that we want to do? And the rest what it is, or else we can really get lost in the whole, thing. So we have to be clear on what we really want and what we're going to do, because this is really, though it is important, I don't think this is what we're saying we're going to do at this time.
Right. Right. So I think that Alex has a good point. That's an important study, but I don't think that's the focus of this group at this time. And I personally, I am more intrigued myself about the work readiness of graduates and of internships, but I also see how that is, or externships, but I also see how that would be important as well. And perhaps there could be concurrent studies, or perhaps we could do one in the summer and another one going forward. I don't know. So that, we need to look about the logistics of those kinds of projects based on our time and resources. Right, so that's it for today. I will follow up with all the colleagues who have said they have interest. And students, any other passing ending comments or thoughts? I'm very happy with how involved Alex has been in his comments. So Alex, please feel free to come back. I'm very interesting with your comments. Very, very engaging. And Dennis, thanks for coming. Certainly may come back. I'm kind of curious. So you're in a doctoral program that's in engineering?
Environmental sustainability and climate change.
Okay. So in environmental studies.
Built environment.
Okay. So do you use only quantitative methods in PhD studies in that area?
No. For example, what I'm doing, my research in is the effects of climate change on hospitals within the Caribbean. And one of the design criteria for structures and buildings is the serviceability of it. And serviceability is a more qualitative aspect of it, how the people feel within the building, how comfortable they are, and what effects of vibrations of the building would have effect on them.
Okay.
Things like those.
Also, to get that, you basically do either observations or interviews or something, focus groups to get
interviews, right? Yeah.
The serviceability. Never heard that term before. The serviceability of the buildings or the environment.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas the structure aspect now is purely quantitative.
That makes sense, because we want to be in buildings that remain erect for as long as possible, including during acts of God like hurricanes and earthquakes and the like, right?
Particularly during a hurricane, whenever the roofs go, the hospital won't be functional. So they have to take them out and people will be dying. Right? If you don't have a hospital fully functional during an entire Category 5 hurricane and so on.
Oh, as a side note, how does anybody research that? Meaning, do you test with a model? Because you're not going to actually put a building in hurricane-like environment.
No, we
Or do
design.
you just create a computer model and simulate and see if it works?
Yeah, we have wind tunnel analysis and
Okay, I see.
force tunnels that we would subjected a model building to the various forces such as wind. And we design buildings against against forces of wind, so it can withstand the force of a hurricane wind.
Okay.
But designs have always been done based on past data, right? It has never been done on future or forecasting data.
So you actually use empirical data from the past in order to. That makes sense. That's good. Good to know.
That's why I'm going to do the project because all along, and if you recognize, due to climate change and we're having more intense hurricane, you have more and more damage going on, even though it figured that we have designed the building to a certain hurricane force.
Right.
There's always another stronger hurricane or some more intense coming up later on that will cause the building to be damaged again and not functional during that time. So we have to look at forecasting the wind forces and so on.
I'm sure that's a non-trivial area. Yeah, because I'm in a modeling group looking at. I'm in the Ministry of Health COVID modeling group looking at predicting the COVID cases, hospitalization, deaths, etc. And it's really fascinating. I'm just a minor member of the team. It's really fascinating how complex it really is to do that kind of level of prediction based on a whole lot of things. And I suspect it's similarly complicated for working out the structural, I guess the structural, capacity of a building? I'm not sure what the right term is.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I have the right term? I don't know, I'm just guessing. I've not studied that area at all.
Currently, there is a climate change working group at the University of West Indies that does forecasting of hurricanes and other climate change effects, right? But I just completed, for the past year and a half, just completed a study funded by the World Bank for the government of Jamaica Ministry of Health on the resilience of the health sector against climate change. So that was where I got the idea of design forecasting.
So you're doing important research on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, it sounds very impressive. Anyway, you can feel free to join us again. And
yes, interesting.
Anyway, I think that's it for today, everybody. Thanks very much for coming. And can somebody tell me the time again? Sorry, I'm here without a timepiece.
8:05, which is 7:05 by your time.
Okay, all right. So I need to run. I actually have another online meeting. So take care, guys.